Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're not just going to talk about cybersecurity, we're actually going to build a fortress, a digital one. We're going to get into the nitty-gritty of how your data is actually kept safe and really understand the strategies that keep the bad guys out.
I mean, it seems so simple, doesn't it? You punch in a username, a password, and poof, you're in. But behind that login screen, there's a whole flurry of activity happening, a complex series of checks and balances. It's kind of like showing your ID at the gate of a heavily guarded castle. And today, we're going to take a tour of the whole thing, every wall, every gate, and every guard post.
Okay, let's dive right in. The best way to get your head around all this is to think of your online security like a fortress, and this fortress has 4 crucial layers of defense. First, you've got to prove who you are. Then there are rules about what you're even allowed to do. After that, we have to scramble your secrets to keep them safe. And finally, you need guards on patrol looking for threats.
So, that very first gate you come to, it's all about your identity. Before any system lets you in, it has to be absolutely sure you are who you say you are. And this whole process, this first critical step, is what we call authentication. It's basically the digital gatekeeper yelling, "Who goes there?"
So how do systems do that? Well, they usually rely on a mix of these 3 factors. Something you know, that's the obvious one, your password, your PIN. Something you have, that's a physical thing, like your phone or key card. And something you are is, well, you. We're talking biometrics, like your fingerprint or your face. And really, the best security, the really strong stuff, combines at least 2 of them.
And you know, it's kind of funny, because the one thing we all use, passwords, is so often the weakest part of the whole system. People just naturally pick things that are easy to remember, like, well, all of these. But that also makes them incredibly easy for someone else to guess. I mean, a hacker doesn't have to be a genius if your password is password.
So, systems know we're going to pick weak passwords. How do they protect us from ourselves? Well, they use a really clever trick. A good system, a secure system, never, ever stores your actual password. If a hacker manages to break in and steal the list of users, they're not going to find a nice, neat list of passwords ready to use.
Instead, they store what's called a hash of your password. You can think of a hash function as this sort of one-way digital meat grinder. You put your password in one side, this scrambled gobbledygook comes out the other, and there is absolutely no way to put it back through in reverse. And to make it even safer, modern systems add a little random data called a salt to your password before hashing. So even if you and I use the same password, our hashes look totally different in the database. Pretty clever, right?
And this shows you just how powerful that is. Just look at this. The password 123456 gives you this specific long hash, but you add just one more digit, just one little number, and bam, the output is completely different. It's unrecognizable. That's why when you log in, the system just hashes what you typed and checks if it matches the hash they have on file.
Now, to make that first gate even tougher to crack, we bring in that second factor, something you have. This is what we all know as 2-factor authentication. Even if a bad guy somehow steals your password, they're still stuck. They can't get in because they don't physically have your phone to receive that text message code. It forces them to beat you in 2 different ways, digitally and physically, and that's a whole lot harder to pull off.
And the final factor is you, literally, biometrics, using your unique physical self to get in. But as you can see, there's always this trade-off. Your DNA is about as unique as it gets, but it's not exactly practical for logging into your email. Yeah, using your face to unlock your phone is super convenient, but our faces change, and they're not nearly as unique as, say, the pattern in your iris. It's this constant balancing act between maximum security and ease of use.
Okay, so you did it. You proved who you are, and you're officially inside the fortress. So now what? Well, this brings us to the second layer of defense, authorization. Think of it this way. Authentication got you past the main gate. Authorization is what decides which buildings you can enter and which doors you can open now that you're inside.
And the single most important rule here, the absolute core idea, is what's called the principle of least privilege. It's actually really simple, but it's so powerful. A user should only have access to the exact files and tools they need to do their job, and absolutely nothing more. It's common sense, really. You wouldn't give the castle cook the keys to the armory, would you? This way, if an attacker does manage to take over an account, the damage they can do is seriously limited. So in practice, this means being really careful about who can do what. Can a user just read a file, or do they need to be able to change it, Can they delete things? And this last one, execute, that's a big one. Can they actually run programs? Because that's how malware often gets its foot in the door. Carefully limiting these permissions is just a fundamental part of locking a system down.
All right, now let's go deeper into the fortress. We're heading into the treasure vault itself, where the real secrets are kept. This is our third layer, cryptography. This is the science of making sure that even if a thief somehow gets into the vault, the treasure, your data, is completely useless to them. And there's a really key difference to get here. Security through obscurity is basically hiding your key under the doormat. Sure, it works until someone thinks to look there. Cryptography, on the other hand, is like putting your data inside a high-tech vault that can only be opened with a complex mathematical key. Even if the thief finds the vault, it doesn't matter. The data inside is still safe.
You know, one of the first and most famous examples of this is the Caesar cipher, which Julius Caesar supposedly used. The idea is super simple. You just shift every letter of the alphabet forward by a set number of places. That number is your key. So here, with a key of 4, an A becomes an E, a B becomes an F, and you just keep going down the line. And the whole point is this: a message that's perfectly clear, like Torah, 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 suddenly becomes the meaningless XSV, XSV, XSV. To anyone who doesn't have the key, which is 4 in this case, the message is just a bunch of random letters. Total gibberish. Okay, but let's be real. A code that's 2,000 years old isn't exactly going to protect your online banking, right? Even this really basic code is pretty easy to break. And the methods used to crack it actually became the foundation for modern cryptanalysis, the science of code breaking.
The first way is actually pretty brilliant. It's called frequency analysis. We know that in English, the letter E is the most common. So you just count up the letters in the secret message. If X shows up the most, well, it's probably the encrypted E, and that tells you the shift key. The other way, brute force. You just try all 25 possible keys until the message makes sense. It's child's play compared to modern codes that have trillions upon trillions of keys.
Okay, so we've checked who the user is, we've limited what they can do, and we've scrambled our most sensitive data. That brings us to our fourth and final layer. What about threats trying to sneak in, or maybe ones that are already lurking inside? For that, you need guards. Guards on the walls, patrolling 24/7. And in the digital world, that's your antivirus software.
So, your antivirus is basically doing two main jobs. Static scanning is like the night watchman, going through the castle and checking every room for known intruders before the day gets started. Dynamic scanning, on the other hand, is like the guards watching people in the courtyard, looking for anyone acting suspiciously right now, as it's happening. But here's the thing. This system has a huge weakness. It's called the zero-day problem. What happens when a hacker creates a brand new, never-before-seen virus? It has no known signature. How do you catch a bad guy you've never even seen before, one with no wanted poster? Traditional scanning is totally blind to that kind of threat. Well, the answer is a much smarter technique called heuristics. Instead of looking for a familiar face, the software starts looking for shady behavior. Is some random program suddenly trying to encrypt all your files? Is it secretly trying to access your webcam? By flagging these kinds of malicious actions, it can spot and stop a brand new threat it's never seen before. Of course, this just creates a constant cat and mouse game, with the good guys getting smarter at spotting behavior and the bad guys getting sneakier at hiding it.
So, there you have it, the 4 layers of our digital fortress. Authentication at the main gate, authorization for every door inside, cryptography protecting the treasure in the vault, and antivirus guards walking the walls. Every single layer is crucial, but remember, any fortress is only as strong as its weakest point. So it all comes down to this. When you think about your own fortress, your own online life, which one of those walls is a little bit shaky? Which part needs the most work?